They buried me in debt and called it love. When the collectors dragged me out of my apartment like trash, my so-called family stood by the window, sipping tea. I still remember the way Lindsay smiled as if she were watching a scene from her favorite drama. And my brother Leslie? He offered them the passcode to my phone, pretending to help. That's when I realized no one was coming to save me. I was 28, drowning in loans I didn't create, my bank accounts emptied by the very people I once called family. My name was signed on papers I'd never seen, credit cards I never applied for. But every time I confronted them, they gaslighted me into silence. Nelia, you're the only one in the family with a good job. Nelia, it's just temporary. Leslie's business will take off soon. Nelia, don't be selfish. We raised you. Raised me? Or raised a scapegoat to carry their failures? I was the perfect fool, a working machine in high heels. And the day I lost my job because Lindsay used my ID to cover for her scandal at my office, they kicked me out. Without blinking, I stood on the street, suitcases soaked in rain, and watched as the doors shut behind me. That was the moment something inside me snapped, or maybe it died. That night, I walked to the bridge, not to jump, just to feel something colder than their betrayal. And that's when fate intervened. Brakes squealed, lights flashed, and everything went black. But death didn't want me. I opened my eyes in my 22-year-old body 6 years before it all went wrong. The day I got my first job offer, the day Leslie begged me to co-sign a loan, the day my life began to spiral. Not this time. This time, I wouldn't be their fool. I would make them regret ever touching a cent of mine. I would turn every tear they caused into fuel. And by the time they realized what I was capable of, I'd own the very industry they tried to ruin me in. When Nelia Santos first entered adulthood, she thought love looked like sacrifice. She believed in giving without keeping count, in showing up even when others disappeared. Her family wasn't picture perfect, but she tried to fill the cracks with effort, money, and unwavering loyalty. She was the first in her family to graduate college, the first to land a real job with benefits and a nameplate on a desk. She studied business administration with dreams of building something that lasted. But instead, she became the safety net they tossed every failure onto. Her older brother Leslie was the golden child, charming, ambitious, full of schemes that never quite worked out. He had big ideas and empty pockets, and he always seemed to show up right when her paycheck hit the bank. Nelia, I'm building something this time. Just a small loan. You'll get it back, with interest, he'd say, grinning like he'd already won. Her cousin Lindsay, on the other hand, was subtle. Poison. Polished nails, practiced smiles, and a tongue dipped in sugar and venom. She'd cry on Nelia's shoulder, then swipe her credit card to buy heels the next day. She called Nelia her sister, but only when she wanted something. You're the only one I can trust, Lindsay would whisper. I'd never ask if I had another choice, and every time Nelia said yes, she thought saying yes made her strong. But all it did was stretch her thinner and thinner until she couldn't recognize herself. She worked 60-hour weeks while Leslie blew thousands on failed crypto projects. She skipped meals to send money when Lindsay's emergencies mysteriously aligned with flash sales. She covered rent for the family apartment even after she moved out. She made excuses to creditors on Leslie's behalf. And when her own name was flagged for fraud, she didn't even flinch. She just took out another loan. Because they were family. Because they promised they'd repay her. Because they said they loved her. But that love came with terms and expiration dates. The final straw wasn't the money. It was the betrayal. When Lindsay caused a scandal at the firm where Nelia worked, leaking sensitive files while pretending to be her, it was Nelia who got fired. HR didn't care about explanations. The damage was done. And when she confronted them, standing in the middle of the family's cramped living room, jobless and exhausted, Leslie had the nerve to shrug. You'll bounce back, he said, flipping through his phone. You always do. Nelia looked around at the faces she once considered her world. They didn't look guilty. They didn't even look sorry. They just looked annoyed. As if her breakdown was an inconvenience, she left that night, suitcase in hand, dignity trailing behind like a ghost. The rain soaked her clothes, but it couldn't wash away the years of resentment clinging to her skin. And when that car hit her, when she saw nothing but light and silence, she didn't scream. She didn't fight it. She welcomed it. But she didn't die. She woke up 6 years earlier. Her phone buzzed on her nightstand, an unfamiliar ringtone she hadn't heard in years. The wallpaper was her old university crest. Her dorm room looked exactly as it had when she was 22. She stared at the mirror in shock. Her face youthful, unburdened, free of the fine lines stress had etched stared back. It wasn't a dream. She'd gone back to the day Leslie would first ask her to co-sign his business loan. The day she'd say yes and unknowingly shackle herself to his debts. But not this time. This time, she had 6 years of pain carved into memory. 6 years of betrayal she could now avoid. Nelia Santos was no longer the selfless sister, the reliable cousin, the naive woman with open arms and an open wallet. This time, she would say no, and this time, she would build her empire first, let Leslie scramble for scraps, let Lindsay play games without her safety net, let them taste the consequences of their choices. Nelia had loved them deeply. Now, she'd let them drown in the silence she once filled with kindness, because in this life, she wasn't here to save anyone. She was here to rise. Nelia didn't waste a single moment. The first time around, she had let kindness blur her vision. This time, she watched everything with unnerving clarity. She declined Leslie's call before it even finished ringing. She already knew what he wanted. It was 2 days before his infamous business pitch, the one that had dragged her credit score into the ground. In her first life, she had said yes on instinct, wanting to believe in him, wanting to prove she was a good sister. Now, she let the call go to voicemail and deleted it. That simple act felt like breathing for the first time. She went about her day deliberately, as if time itself were glass, and she could finally see all the cracks before they shattered. She made copies of her official documents, changed her banking PIN, and told no one, not even her old roommate, where she was storing her emergency savings. Nelia knew betrayal didn't always arrive with a bang. Sometimes it slipped in through the back door, wrapped in soft voices and false affection. So when Lindsay showed up at her dorm unannounced, grinning like they were still best friends, Nelia kept her face calm. "Hey, stranger," Lindsay chirped, arms wide as she leaned in for a hug. "I've missed you. Got time for coffee?" Nelia nodded and grabbed her keys. Not because she trusted Lindsay, but because she needed to see the lie from the inside this time, to remember what manipulation looked like up close. They walked to the campus cafe where Lindsay did her usual routine: compliments, laughter, half complaints about her professors, a few name drops to seem impressive. Then came the pause. Lindsay sipped her drink and leaned forward. "So, this is super awkward, but I was wondering if you might be able to help me out." There it was, smooth as ever. Nelia tilted her head. "Help? I need to buy a new laptop. Mine's basically dead, and I've got 3 term papers. I'm good for it. I can pay you back next month." Same script, different day. Nelia stared at her, the silence growing uncomfortable. Lindsay's smile faltered just slightly. "No," Nelia said, the word cut the air like a blade. "Final. Clear." Lindsay blinked. "Wait, what?" "I said no, I'm not giving you money, Lindsay." Lindsay gave a short laugh, like Nelia was joking. But when she saw Nelia's expression hadn't changed, her brows furrowed. "Wow, that's cold. I thought you always had my back." "Having your back meant covering up things that broke me," Nelia said evenly. "Not anymore." Lindsay leaned back, lips pursed. "So this is how it's going to be. You get a little success, and now you're better than everyone?" "No," Nelia replied. "I just stopped being stupid." She stood up and walked out without waiting for a reply. She felt lighter than she had in years, but freedom comes with consequences. That night, she got a message from Leslie. Not a voice note, not a call, just a screenshot, a single, cruel image. A fake email sent to her internship supervisor, warning them that Nelia had confidentiality issues and had shared client documents with a family member. She knew exactly who wrote it: Lindsay. Nelia's hands shook. Not because she was afraid of the lie, but because she recognized the pattern. The same one from her previous life. The moment she set a boundary, they retaliated. Only this time, she was ready. She called her supervisor before panic could take root. "Please disregard the email you just received. I've been the target of a false report. I'm forwarding documentation that proves I've never accessed or shared any internal files outside of work." The tone of her voice, the calm precision, made her supervisor pause. "I believe you," they said slowly, "but I'll still need to forward this to our protocol." "Of course," Nelia said. "Please do." She ended the call and exhaled. So they wanted war? Then let them have it. She printed out every screenshot she'd ever saved from the first life, this time prepared early. Messages where Leslie begged for money. Conversations where Lindsay admitted using her name to open accounts. She labeled them neatly and stored them in a hard drive kept offline, but the emotional cut ran deeper, because deep down, she had hoped just a little that if she changed her actions, they would change too, that maybe, this time, love would mean something, but it didn't. They weren't shocked that she said no, they were offended, because in their eyes, Nelia existed to serve. To pay, to forgive, to stay, and now that she wasn't doing that, they would punish her until she did. Nelia stared at her reflection, the girl in the mirror no longer naive. Her softness hadn't vanished, it had just been sharpened into something steel-edged. Let them misunderstand her. Let them label her cold, selfish, ungrateful. She knew the truth. They were never family. Not in the way she had been to them. They were debt collectors of the soul, bleeding her dry, smiling while they did it. And this time, the bill was coming due. Nelia didn't cry, not when Leslie blocked her on every platform, not when Lindsay posted a vague tweet about backstabbers pretending to be angels, not even when her internship supervisor, though polite, asked her to take a short leave while things are investigated. But inside, she was a whirlwind of emotion, grief, not for them but for the version of herself that used to exist. The girl who had tried so hard to be loved, the one who had bent herself into shapes they needed. Responsible sister, dependable friend, bottomless wallet, patient listener. She had always assumed that if she gave more, they would love her more. But now she realized the truth. They only loved what she gave, not who she was. That realization gutted her. She stood in the middle of her tiny dorm room, surrounded by books she couldn't focus on, notes she couldn't process, and a silence so loud it made her chest tighten. A sharp, stinging loneliness settled in. She had distanced herself from the people who used her, but that left her with no one. There were moments when she caught herself reaching for her phone to text Lindsay still. On muscle memory, she'd open the message screen, type out a sentence, then stop. Who would understand? Who could possibly grasp what it felt like to live two lives and be betrayed in both? She thought of Martin. He had always been the only person who saw past the surface. But in her first life, she hadn't given him the attention he deserved. She had been too tired, too distracted by everyone else's chaos. And by the time she realized it, it had been too late. Now, he was still just a classmate, polite, quiet, observant, and distant. She had to fight the urge to go to him, to fall into his calm and ask him to anchor her. But she wouldn't lean on him, at least, not yet. She wouldn't drag anyone into her storm until she was strong enough to shield them from it. Still, the ache was constant. In her throat when she woke up from nightmares that blurred past and present. In her chest when she saw families laughing at the park on her walk home. In her stomach when she remembered the $40 in her bank account and the rent due in 2 weeks. She had a plan. She had a plan, but plans didn't stop the pain. Every step forward felt like walking on broken glass, painful, slow, deliberate. Every breath reminded her of how alone she was. She wanted to scream sometimes, to yell into the wind. Why me? Why again? Wasn't once enough? But she didn't, because no one would answer. Instead, she journaled, wrote everything down, what they'd done, what she felt, what she refused to become. She filled 5 pages in one night, hand cramping, tears blurring ink, and when she closed the notebook, she stared at the cover. A plain leather-bound journal, her only witness. This was her purging, not of anger that was still simmering, but of the sadness that threatened to drown her. It didn't happen all at once. The healing came in moments, a quiet morning when the sun hit her desk just right. A stranger who held the elevator, a message from her professor saying, "Take your time, I believe in you." They were tiny things, but they mattered. They reminded her she was still here, still trying, still worthy, and gradually, the weight on her chest shifted. Not gone, but no longer crushing. One night, she stood in front of the mirror again. Same face, same eyes, but something was different. There was a new steadiness in her reflection. Not hardness but strength. Not bitterness but clarity. She placed a hand over her heart. This time, I choose me. It wasn't a vow for revenge. Not exactly. It was a promise that no matter what happened next, she would never, ever abandon herself again. Nelia was finally starting to breathe again. Her days had fallen into a rhythm. Mornings were for classes, evenings for planning. She tracked every cent, mapped out her business launch in meticulous detail, and distanced herself from Lindsay and Leslie. Entirely. Her heart still stung, but her focus was sharpening until the universe threw her a curve she didn't see coming. It started with a whisper in the hallway. Did you hear about the scholarship scandal? Nelia barely paused. Campus gossip was constant, but then a familiar name cut through the noise like glass. Leslie Vance. Her stomach clenched. She turned the corner and spotted a group of students huddled by the bulletin board. A new post was taped up. Academic Integrity Office notice investigation pending. Vance Leslie. She blinked. Then again. It wasn't a joke. Her brother, perfect student, everyone's golden boy, was under investigation. Nelia's thoughts raced. This wasn't in the first life. This never happened. She kept walking, pretending not to care. But the whispers followed her like shadows. Later that afternoon, she received a message request from an anonymous account. One line. You want to know what Leslie really did? Meet me at the South Library steps, 7 p.m. Her fingers hovered over the phone. This reeked of a setup. And yet, she needed to know. At exactly 7, she stood on the cold stone steps, arms crossed, eyes scanning the courtyard. Then she saw him. A boy maybe a year younger, backpack slung low, face pale. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. You're Nelia, he said. I shouldn't even be talking to you. But what he did, what your brother did, it ruined my chance at graduating. Nelia narrowed her eyes. What are you talking about? He paid me to write his papers, to sit his online exams during lockdown. Nelia froze. You have proof? The boy nodded. Everything. Messages, screenshots, even a recorded phone call. I turned it over to the integrity office last week. I didn't want to, but he threatened me. Said if I didn't do it, he'd tell everyone I was cheating him. The blood drained from Nelia's face. Leslie, the same brother she nearly bankrupted herself to support. The one who told everyone she was too emotional and ungrateful. The one who had smiled, calm and charming, as he stole from her future. Now his secrets were cracking, and he was dragging other people down with him. The boy walked away. Nelia stood motionless under the library lights. A war raged in her chest. She should feel vindicated. She didn't. Instead, she felt the stirrings of something worse, dread, because Leslie never went down alone. And if he sensed she was watching, if he even suspected she had anything to do with his exposure, he'd retaliate. He'd drag her name through the dirt again. Or worse, find a way to tie her into it. Her phone buzzed. Another message. From Leslie. We need to talk. Now. Nelia stared at Leslie's message. We need to talk. Now. Her thumb hovered over the reply button, but she didn't press it. The air in her apartment was stifling, heavy with tension. The anonymous student's confession still echoed in her mind, proof of Leslie's fraud, his threats, his cowardice. And now he was reaching out, not with denial or rage but with urgency. He knew. Her phone buzzed again. If you don't come to the quad in 15 minutes, I'll come to you. Her lips tightened. He wasn't asking. He was warning. She slipped on her coat and walked out, hands clenched in her pockets. The campus was quiet, blanketed in night. Under the yellow glow of the quad's lamps, she found him leaning against the base of a statue, one foot propped casually, as if they were just siblings catching up. Nelia, Leslie said, voice low. We have a problem. She folded her arms. You have a problem, and you better not drag me into it. His jaw tensed. Someone sent evidence to the integrity office. Fake messages, screenshots, voice memos. They're trying to ruin me. She didn't flinch. Is it fake? He looked at her sharply. You think I'd be that stupid? He snapped. You think I'd jeopardize everything for a few grades? I think, she said calmly, you've always done whatever you wanted, and let others bleed for it. Leslie's mask slipped, just for a second. His shoulders twitched, a flash of the boy who always got caught but never punished. You think you're better than me now? Just because you're playing little businesswoman? Don't forget who gave you that apartment, who vouched for you. You mean the apartment I paid for, with my student loans? The one you let me drown in, while you bought new sneakers every week? His smile vanished. Careful, Nelia, he said softly. You think they'll listen to you? A reclusive freak who barely spoke for a year. I've already started damage control. People believe what I tell them, and if you get in my way, you'll do what? She challenged. Lie about me. Again? Paint me as a bitter sister? Frame me like you did with that student who outed you? He hesitated. Too long. So it was true. I kept your name out of it, he said, almost offensively. You should be grateful. Nelia's eyes flashed. Grateful? That word lit something in her chest, a slow, dangerous fire. She'd been grateful when he let her eat scraps off his success. Grateful when he used her credit score for his loan. Grateful when he humiliated her in front of his girlfriend just to look magnanimous. I buried myself in debt, she whispered. For you, for Lindsay, for a family who smiled while I sank. Leslie's face turned cold. You think anyone's going to care? You're too late. This is your last warning. Back off. But this time, she didn't lower her eyes. This time, she stepped forward. Too late? Her voice was steel. You're the one who's too late. I've been building something, Leslie, quietly. And now, I don't need your reputation. I don't need your name. And I definitely don't need your threats. He opened his mouth, but she held up her phone. You know that boy you threatened? He's not alone. You've left a trail of messes behind you. You thought no one noticed. But I did. And I'm not afraid of you anymore. She turned and walked away. Behind her, he didn't follow. The next morning, it hit campus like wildfire. The Integrity Office had issued an official notice. Leslie Vance suspended pending investigation. The anonymous evidence had been corroborated by 2 more students. One came forward with a video of Leslie bragging about ghosting through finals. The scandal reached the dean's desk by noon. Nelia sat in the back of the lecture hall, watching Lindsay scramble down the hallway with her phone glued to her ear. No, I don't know what's happening. He swore everything was fine. Lindsay's carefully curated image headband neat, blazer crisp was cracking. Her voice trembled. Nelia almost felt pity. Almost. But pity didn't change the past. That evening, Nelia received a call from an unfamiliar number. Miss Nelia Hart? This is Diane Lynn, from Kingston Media. We saw your name listed in a student-run business competition 2 years ago, Project Revive. It's gaining attention again in light of certain scandals. Are you still pursuing that venture? Her heart skipped. She remembered the project. A local startup idea she'd shelved after Leslie convinced her it wasn't worth it. Now somehow, it was being noticed again. Yes, she said, steady. I'm reviving it. The woman laughed. Good, because we're looking for young female entrepreneurs to spotlight in our feature next month. I think you'd be perfect. Later that night, she stood by her window, watching the city lights flicker. She'd always thought the climax of her story would be revenge, seeing Leslie fall, Lindsay exposed, debts cleared, but that wasn't it. Not really. The real climax was this moment. Not rage, not vindication, freedom. She wasn't just reacting anymore. She wasn't just surviving. She was choosing, and she chose to rise. The sun dipped low over the skyline, setting the buildings aglow in amber and gold. Nelia stood at the edge of her new office, a small but bright space overlooking the city's west end. It wasn't lavish. It wasn't even finished. But it was hers. The logo on the glass door behind her read, Revive, Empower, Rebuild, Rise. Once a forgotten student project dismissed by Leslie as idealistic garbage, Revive was now being fast-tracked into a pilot program with a major media grant thanks to the coverage of the academic fraud scandal, Leslie's scandal. He hadn't shown his face on campus in weeks. After his suspension was announced, the university board uncovered more fabricated group project credits, tampered login logs, even ghost-ridden internship reports. Every piece was documented, meticulously, by Nelia. But she hadn't stopped at the university. She'd gone further. Leslie's former internship employer, Crestview Analytics, was alerted, quietly, anonymously. When they asked for verification of his credentials, they found he'd submitted a recommendation letter under the name of a professor who'd never taught him. They dropped him. Then Lindsay's world cracked too. Her social accounts were full of curated moments, lattes, matching outfits, beach weekends with Leslie. She'd built her identity around the relationship. When it collapsed, so did the illusion. But Nelia didn't gloat. She didn't post, didn't mock, didn't even reply to Lindsay's confused, half-pleading texts. Not when she asked what happened. Not when she accused her of being cruel. And not even when she tried to gaslight her with, "You're acting like I didn't care about you." I tried. You were always so quiet, hard to connect with. Nelia simply blocked her. Some people didn't deserve closure. They deserved silence. The real revenge, she realized, was never in humiliating them publicly. That was too easy, too cheap. The real revenge was in thriving without them, in proving she never needed their validation, only their absence. And now, she had that. Her student loans were nearly gone, most repaid through small grants, freelance contracts, and careful budgeting. The rest, covered by the media spotlight on Revive. When the article dropped, titled From Debt to Disruption, How One Student Took Down an Academic Fraud Ring and Built a Business from the Rubble, everything shifted. Opportunities came fast. Interviews, collaborations, local investors who loved her quiet steel. A podcast appearance that went viral, but none of it made her forget. One afternoon, she received an email from Leslie. Subject: I was wrong. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I had to say it. You were right about all of it. I don't know how to fix things, but I'm trying. If you ever want to talk, I'll listen this time. She reread it once, then deleted it. She didn't need his apology to heal. She already had. Weeks later, she was invited to speak at a local college. A mentorship panel about rebuilding after betrayal. Standing on that stage, she looked out at the young faces, some eager, some jaded, all watching. I was buried in debt, she began, her voice calm. But the worst debt I carried wasn't financial, it was emotional. I gave everything I had to people who called it love while draining me dry. And I let them. I thought that was what family meant. That sacrifice made you valuable. That silence kept the peace. I was wrong. She paused. The silence was heavy, respectful. I learned that survival isn't the goal. Living is. Building something you believe in, even if everyone calls it stupid. Walking away, even when it means being alone. And starting over, again and again, until the people who buried you can no longer reach where you've grown. The applause was thunderous. Later that night, as she left the auditorium, a girl with tear-streaked cheeks rushed up to her. Thank you, she whispered. I'm in the same place you were. I didn't know it could get better. Nelia smiled softly. It can. It will. Just don't let them make you forget who you are. On the anniversary of her move out, the day she'd walked out of Leslie and Lindsay's apartment with nothing but a duffel bag and a grocery list of betrayal she celebrated quietly, she bought herself a soft beige coat, a book she'd always wanted, a cake. And she wrote herself a letter. Dear Nelia, you didn't just survive. You transformed. You are not what they did to you. You are what you chose to become after. She tucked it into the drawer of her new desk. The past was still there, still real, still part of her, but it didn't own her anymore. She did.